years ago. How he repaid her is unbelievable. Ingaborg took in a boy named Jordan, who was 4 years old. It's hard to believe that Jordan paid Ingaborg back after 27 years, and it was love at first sight. As soon as she saw baby Jordan at the hospital, in an interview, Ingaborg talked about that happy day. They put him in my arms, and it was love at first sight. He was always a part of the family. Ingaborg wanted to adopt the baby Jordan and took him home right away. But there was a problem. Jordan's birth mother had begged the shelter staff that he should be adopted by either an African American couple or a couple of mixed races. She didn't say why, but Ingaborg was white, so it was hard for her to adopt Jordan. For the next 4 years, Ingaborg basically spent her time persuading the right people that she was the right mother for Jordan. At times, she had to beg and plead with everyone involved to let her adopt Jordan. Adopting a child was not easy, but Ingaborg finally won the fight by being persistent and determined. It was no surprise that Ingaborg was overjoyed when her dream came true and she was able to adopt Jordan. She was so happy to bring her newly adopted son home and to start a new part of her life with him. The U.S.-born Ingaborg was one of only few people who took care of foster children. A whopping 120 foster kids passed through her home at one period or another. It's possible that Ingaborg thought that taking care of foster kids was her calling in life. Sam, the man she had fallen in love with and was planning to marry, broke her heart by leaving her for a much younger woman, just a few months before the wedding. Ingaborg was hurt and broken at first, but she got better over time and vowed she would never get married again. She instead spent her whole life and very little money taking care of foster children because she loved them so much. When Ingaborg asked, the local orphanage would drop off a foster child with her. The child would stay with her until the orphanage found them a stable home. Because of this, Ingaborg became a well-liked and respected figure in the area's orphanage. The orphanage authorities revered Ingaborg for her efforts in lightening the burden of taking care of all of the foster kids alone. The kids who lived in the orphanage loved and cared for her because she always brought them gifts. When Ingaborg went to see the children, she always brought bags of treats like chocolates and lollipops, cookies, and other things that kids like. She also brought bags of toys when she went to visit them and shared them with all of the children. As a cashier at a nearby bank, Ingaborg made a good living. Either she was working at the bank or she was with a child of foster care. Ingaborg spent all of her time and free money at the nearby orphanage, where she played with the children and gave them gifts. In this way, she met little Jordan. Ingaborg took him home with her as officially her adopted son after the adoption process was over. Some people would say she loved him and cared for him more than a mother could ever give her own children. It was so much love that Ingaborg gave to Jordan. She made sure he had everything he needed. The bond between Jordan and Ingaborg got stronger over time. It was like a Jordian knot. Other sensible women hoped to have that kind of bond with their own children. After 3 years, when Jordan was 7, he got very sick all of a sudden. He started throwing up, he had a fever, and lost his appetite. Jordan's temperature was also too high, and for little reason. Because Ingaborg was scared, she rushed Jordan to the hospital just 2 days after he started showing these symptoms. After doing a number of tests on Jordan, the doctors said that he had pneumonia. After the doctors told Ingaborg the news, she broke down in tears. The doctor asked Ingaborg, "Why are you crying, ma'am?" To make her feel better. "The illness does not mean death. Your son will get better in a few days if he gets the right medicine, which we can promise to you," the doctor said. But Jordan didn't get any better, and over the next few days he got worse. His health continued to decline, and Ingaborg's fears and worries kept making her feel weak as well. She was always by Jordan's bedside. The hospital staff agreed to move an extra bed into Jordan's room when Ingaborg asked them to. That's where she slept while Jordan was in the hospital, next to her beloved son. At the same time, Ingaborg forgot her phone while she was rushing Jordan to the hospital. When she finally realized her phone was gone, she started to panic. She had planned to call the manager of the bank where she worked to ask him for time off. This made her wonder what she should do. In order for her to get the time she needed, she would have to leave Jordan for a few days. This meant that she would have to go back to work and request that time off. But that choice was already made in her mind. Ingaborg had no doubt that she would not leave her sick son, and at that time her main goal was to help Jordan get better, and figuring out everything else would have to wait. Finally, after a few days, Jordan started to get better, slowly but surely, after being very sick for almost 3 weeks. Jordan wasn't completely out of the woods, but at least his fever was gone and he got his appetite back. He still felt very weak though, and all of his muscles were aching. A lot of happiness filled Ingaborg's heart. She fed Jordan with a spoon like he was a baby. After just 2 weeks, Jordan was totally back to normal. He got out of the hospital and Ingaborg was so happy and relieved that she took her beloved son home. Her life had been a living hell for almost 5 weeks, and Ingaborg didn't even feel as grieved as she felt throughout the duration of Jordan's sickness when her former lover dumped her like trash. For her, it was over. Her loving son had finally gotten better, and she took him back home with her, and all was well. After 2 days, Ingaborg dropped Jordan off at school early in the morning, as she always did. Then she went on to her place of work. Almost 5 weeks had passed since her last visit to the bank, so Ingaborg seemed very tense as she walked slowly inside. She thought the worst would happen, but she prayed for a miracle anyway. People she worked with were confused to see her again, so they looked at her like she was a stranger. People thought that Ingaborg had quit the bank quietly and never came back to town. There were a few co-workers that kindly greeted her. The phone on her desk rang before she even had the chance to sit down. As she shook her hand and picked up the phone, it was indeed her boss. The boss, Mr. Johnson, told Ingaborg to come to his office right away, and with no further explanation. He could see her walking to his office on the security cameras in his office. The strict boss looked at these screens almost every day, all day, keeping an eye on everything his employees and customers did, so she got ready to deal with the results of what she had done. She took a deep breath and walked slowly into Mr. Johnson's office. He looked up from the monitors at her for just a moment as she walked into the room. Ingaborg stood in front of Mr. Johnson's desk and did her best to avoid the manager's eyes. Then she remembered right away why he had called her. She told Mr. Johnson why she hadn't been at work for 5 weeks. She had a hard time telling her boss that she had been at the hospital with her sick son. She even told Mr. Johnson that she had lost her phone. Then pleadingly, she told him to temper justice with mercy. But Mr. Johnson was having none of that. This is a business firm, not a charity home, so you must strictly follow the rules no matter what. These words hit Ingaborg like a stab to the heart, even though she had expected it. "You are hereby fired," Mr. Johnson almost screamed at Ingaborg. "At least let this serve as a lesson to all others that such behavior must not be tolerated," the manager concluded. It was hard for Ingaborg to keep her tears from falling. She didn't want Mr. Johnson to get any pleasure from seeing her cry. At first, she wanted to get down on her knees in front of him and beg him to change his mind, but after giving it some thought, she chose not to do so. She thought it was a waste of time and effort. She knew the boss was a man who meant what he said. Thus, Ingaborg left the office in silence. As soon as she got to her desk, she grabbed her bag and stormed out of the bank, not saying a word to anyone. And then she went home. When Ingaborg finally stopped crying, she took a deep breath and reminded herself that she had given up her job for her son, whom she loved. Ingaborg's life wasn't fun and games for the first few months after she lost her job. She just barely made it by taking care of herself and Jordan, but she didn't give up. She promised herself she would always be strong for Jordan. Ingaborg would sometimes go without food to make sure Jordan had enough to eat, but luck soon smiled upon Ingaborg. After 6 months, she got a better job at a big insurance company that paid more money. Ingaborg's life was finally back to normal. Jordan was a very smart kid who did really well in school. He got into a well-known college to study civil engineering when he was only 20 years old. She was happy for her son, whom she loved. Jordan, on the other hand, made sure to stay in touch with his adopted mother while he was in college. He spent most of the weekends with her at home. After 4 years, Jordan finished from college with outstanding grades. He got a well-paying job with a big building company 6 months after graduating. When the job was offered, it came with a company car and other great perks. The mother and son were finally happy together. Jordan would always be thankful to his mother for everything she had done for him. Ingaborg was the best mother he could ever hoped for. But tragedy struck 7 years later. Ingaborg felt really sick. Jordan ran home from work right away and took his mother to the hospital immediately. The medical professionals around found Ingaborg had polycystic kidney disease after many tests were done on her. They told Jordan what the diagnosis was and also told him that his mother needed a kidney transplant to stay alive. When Jordan heard that news, he was devastated completely. Ingaborg had been his everything for almost 27 years. Jordan couldn't stand to see his mother die like this. He was going to have to do something to save her life, no matter what. Something very brave. It didn't take Jordan long to tell the doctors that he was willing to give his mother one of his kidneys. He didn't even think about it twice. The doctors did all the tests that were needed to see if this kidney was going to be a match for Ingaborg. The tests were able to confirm that Jordan's kidney was in fact a perfect match for her. It wasn't clear to Ingaborg whether she agreed with Jordan's plans when the doctors told her. She was hesitant and wasn't sure if she wanted to go along with Jordan's plan and take his kidney. So she kept telling Jordan that he wasn't required to make that choice for her and that he could back out if he wanted to. But Jordan was set in his ways. He already knew what he wanted to do. He told his mother, No, Mom, I want to do this for you." Ingaborg felt better after hearing what Jordan had to say. She didn't have much on her mind. She just wanted Jordan to be aware of the fact that she was not in any way forcing him to go through with such a procedure to save her life. The doctors did the transplant a few days later, and it went beautifully. Ingaborg was fully healed in just 3 weeks. She was sent home from the hospital after her full recovery. There was a time when she said she couldn't have asked for a better child. In an interview, Jordan talked about his choice to give Ingaborg his kidney. "I feel like this was my calling in life, I guess. At this point, it's the least I could do for her. I hope I can do more for her as I get older," Jordan added with tears. "Everything she's done for me since I was a child, I just wanted to give it back to her and just show her how much I appreciate her." Jordan basically said that Ingaborg saved his life when no one else did, and through love and through hard work, made him into the man he is now. And that was the least he could do to thank his lovely mother for everything she had done for him. Like always, we want to hear back from you. What do you think about this story? Let us know in the comment section below.